Welcome to the Everyday Board Game Podcast with Daniel.
And Daniel.
And today we are going to do another one of our weekly board game breakdown segments where we pick a publisher or a designer and we go over their entire board gameography of games and get insight from them, as well as just researching the ones that we don't know about.
Yeah, exactly.
So today we have a very, very special guest. You can already see it on here if you're watching us live, and that is Curt Covert, owner of Smirk Dagger Games.
Hey, everybody.
And Curt and I go way back. We've known each other for a few years, met at conventions. He's always been like one of the coolest guys I've ever talked to. I just enjoy just sitting down and chatting with you whenever you're not running around like crazy.
Which is always.
Which is always. So I rarely get that opportunity. But at the conventions, one thing that I don't know, Curt, you're probably too modest to point out, everybody knows him at board game conventions. Everyone. No, I'm serious. Everyone who I talk to, they're like, oh yeah, I'm going to go say hi to Curt. Like, they all know you on a first name basis, you know, and they love chatting with you. So you're a good, solid representation of the hobby.
Well, you know, here's the thing. I have always believed when I'm at conventions that I am not there to sell games, interestingly enough. I am there to entertain. I'm there to welcome you into our family and community and have a blast and hope that you transplant that same experience to whoever you like to play games with. And so maybe that's a little bit why, but yeah, I think the experience you have in the booth is, I mean, that's why you're there. That's why you're paying money to go to these shows, right? You could play games anywhere, but it's the environment, it's the experience, and it's the entertainment value that makes it worthwhile. So
exactly, yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Like, why would you go to a convention when you could just go to a local board game store and play the same games, right?
Sure.
I mean, sure, you can see some new things, but really, like, that whole interaction, I probably played less games this past Origins than almost any other convention because I was just busy running around talking to people and saying hi and hanging out at the booths and seeing demos and stuff. Yeah, it was good fun. And I think you hit the nail in the coffin right there, or whatever the expression is. You're right on the money. So we're going to go over your games from Smirk and Dagger, and we're also going to go over Smirk and Laughter as well, because that's also, your product line. And
yes, indeed.
We're going to do all of the Smirk and Dagger games first, and then we'll go into Smirk and Laughter, because that has a Kickstarter coming up that we are very much excited to hear about, and hopefully we'll get some traction as far as people backing it. So
sounds great.
If I'm not mistaken, that'll be next Monday that it launches, or next Tuesday?
Yes, the Tuesday the 16th.
Tuesday the 16th of June. So if you're watching this live, go check it there. We're going to try and upload the video as soon as we can before the Kickstarter.
The video will be uploaded Monday before the Kickstarter.
Awesome. Okay. So feel free to tell everybody about it. Anyway, that's not your job to do our promotion. So we're going to start off with the first game that I have listed here. So on the Board Game Geek website, we have them in order from publish year. They might not be perfectly in order. Like, I know, I think before there were stars, and it came out a little bit after, Not So Fast, but I think Not So Fast showed up later for some reason. Anyway,
okay.
Yeah, we'll get to it as we go. But let's start with the very first title right here, and that is Hex Hex. Curt, what do you want to tell us about Hex Hex and the beginning of Smirk and Dagger?
Well, so what I can say first off is we're taking the Wayback Machine to start talking about some of these titles. I've now been doing this for 17 years, believe it or not, and Hex Hex was the first one that came out. When it actually hit my warehouse is where I consider my game publishing company to have begun, and that was Halloween Day of 2003.
Wait, it got to your warehouse at Halloween Day?
Isn't that perfect?
You couldn't have planned that better.
No. Now back then, there was no Kickstarter. There was no, I put my house on second mortgage in order to pay for my very first game.
Wow.
I don't recommend doing that.
No, most people don't Like most financial educators that I've talked to don't encourage multiple mortgages to pay for projects. But
Yeah.
My wife would kill me.
so
Yep.
so then
Well,
let's,
we talked about it, but
yeah, you planned it before. It wasn't just a spur of the moment. It's like, oh, by the way, you know.
right.
So, what was it about? I know, like, so I'm going to ask you from a designer perspective. So, you know, I'm a designer as well, but I don't. What was the thoughts going through your head when you were decided? All right, well, I'm just going to make my own company and make the games that I want to make, instead of like say approaching a publisher that could have been around at the time.
Um, a really good question. Well, again, back then it was a lot harder to get started, and there were actually a lot fewer companies that you could pitch games to. Um, but I think what ended up happening was I'd been developing games for a couple of years before that, and a lot of them were just garbage. They didn't work out. They never pushed forward. But I decided after those failures, I was also a marketer, and so if I took an imaginary journey and I said, well, listen, if I was going to actually open a company, what would I stand for? Like, why would anyone come to me for games as a new person in the industry? What can I offer that's different? And so I was like, well, I happen to love highly interactive games. I love backstabbing games. Why don't I just focus on that? I'll plant the flag, I'll stand for that. And I came up with the name for the company, Smirk Dagger Games, before I came up with my first game in the line. And then, so once I kind of had that vision of, okay, that's what I'm going to stand for. What now, since all my previous games were like horrible and were like watching paint dry on the wall because there was no interaction, now that I've chosen this as like what I'm going to do, what's the simplest type of game I can come up with that really is a lot of like, take that elements and highly interaction, spell, counter spell, all that kind of thing. And so Hexex actually was born about 2.5 weeks after I named my fantasy company that might one day happen. And
Cool.
that was probably back in like mid 2001 or maybe 2002. And the game developed over the course of about 1.5 years, and I brought it to conventions and I tested it out. Originally, it wasn't even a full game. You played one round of it, and we envisioned it as like this little pickup card game where it was going to be how you decided decisions as you were like sitting. Like, if we were going to order a pizza for game night, okay, play one game of one hand of this, and whoever won got to make the decision, which is why the points in the game are called voice.
Oh, okay.
But what essentially it was, it's if you distill it down, it's like a mean-spirited hot potato game with a magical theme, where I imagined like it was spell, counter spell, and this spell was like bouncing around the room until someone couldn't handle it, and then it went off in their face, with lots of different ways to just constantly change the nature of the hex, what was going to happen to it, how powerful it was, how to split into multiple copies going around the table. Anything that was going to like add chaos and especially treachery, I thought was fun. And so I developed it, like I said, for about 1.5 years, and what actually happened to take it to the next level, I had been up in New Hampshire at a convention up there, and one of the retailers who was a vendor there said, hey, listen, we're going to be going to Gen Con this year. It's the first time it's in Indianapolis. We were going to, we had all these games planned that we we're going to sell, but a lot of them we can't sell now because of exclusivity. The publisher has said, listen, you can't sell this game. It's going to be just at our booth. So we kind of feel like we don't have enough excitement. Why don't you bring your game and set up a little card table in our booth, and you can just like, see how it goes. I'm like, wow, oh, that sounds cool. Now, I'd never been to a major convention. I'd never been to Gen Con before. I had no idea what to expect. So imagine now, here I am, me and my friend Justin at this little tiny card table with a sign, 8.5, 11, in a little stand, and I hand printed 100 copies of the game. I went to like a local copy center and like just like black and white Xeroxes onto cardstock that we hand cut and we put into plastic cases. Even the tokens that are for the game, you had to like put a penny inside and tape them down and cut them out. Like it was.
Gotcha.
And I was like, well, all right, I'll put like $12 on it, for a price, which for like a hand cut game, I was like, well, we'll see.
Yeah.
Well, Gen Con was massive. It was mind-boggling. Like, that first year when the rush of people came through those doors, my brain exploded. Could not process what was happening. And again, here I am in this little tiny booth and just one little card table. But I sold 72 copies at that show.
Wow.
With no press, no PR, just people walking by and saying, "Oh, that looks interesting."
Huh.
And so I came home from that show and I said to my wife, I think I've got something, because people were really enjoying it, and I've sold like almost all of them. And so that's when we talked about, well, what's it gonna take, and that's when I end up putting my house on second mortgage to pay for that first print run. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah, that's a cool story.
And see, so I've never been to Gen Con. I've been to Gamma and Origins, and
the biggest one I've ever been to is Dice Tower West.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so,
well, I mean, Dice Tower West, Origins, I mean, they all have a very similar feel. Gen Con, I think, is probably the granddaddy of them.
And that's the one I'm afraid of.
Yeah. But for sure, if you're used to any large format show, you can kind of picture there's over 200 companies there exhibiting. Like, I mean, it's crazy. It's just crazy. So
yeah, even if they only had one game apiece, you're not making it through
the reason why I like Dice Tower West was it was in Vegas, so
yeah, that's a good reason, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. So then Hex was the very first one, and it's had some new implementations. Hex XL. What was
Hex Next came out of it after it. So that was an expansion on it, and then that did well for like a number of years, and then we reintroduced it. I think it was in 2014 with Hex XL, which was kind of a blending of the two, paring it down, and then adding some new twists and fun. And interestingly, my team, this is a bit of scoop, by the way, guys. My team just surprised me. They have been working on and developing a new version of Hex, which is a deck builder.
Oh.
What? What? Okay, so I've owned Hex XL. I actually got it in a board game subscription box, actually, a while back, and I did always enjoy like the complete shenanigans, as you would expect. Wow, with a deck builder.
So what's really interesting is, I mean, it's still like random, stupid, crazy Hex, but now you start with 10 cards and you are building your deck over time. And one, it's nice because you actually get to execute your deck. A lot of deck builders, like, you get it working just the way you like it, and then it's like the game over. Right. This one, you actually feel like you're utilizing an engine, and you are deciding, well, all right, am I going to go after card drawing? Am I going to go after like making people's lives hell? And like, you can choose a strategy you want to go with and then build towards it. And it's really cool.
Yeah, I'm interested in that one. That sounds pretty good.
Are they just doing it as a passion project to surprise you, or is it actually in the works?
So it started as a passion project, and like, by the way, peek under the tent is what we were doing. And so we built it out on Tabletop Simulator, and so we've been playing during COVID with a bunch of the team, and it's pretty darn tight. I mean, we're I think at this point we've got proof of concept. It makes it actually a more strategic and interesting game, but still has all the stupid fun of the original. So yeah, I think I don't have a release date, but I think this is a project that will go forward. So
that's cool. I mean, I just imagine, knowing how much you like puns, hex, dex, just throwing that out there for you.
That is the name of the game.
Yes. Real quick,
Yeah.
we have one of our viewers. His name, he has the username Ith3 Skylark. It's Josh Van Lanningham from Level 99 Games. Really great guy. He just posted right here. Oh, hey, wow, you got Curt. Cool. So he's excited that you're on. So,
Hey.
So we've talked probably 25 minutes or so on just this one game. So that way
my
it doesn't
God,
take us all
moving.
day. Yeah. We're gonna go on to the next one.
You're gonna have to keep me really tight because I'll go on forever.
Unless you have something to do, we'll take it. Our podcasts go a little long anyway. But let's talk about the next one. Do you want to take this one?
So the next one we have on your list here is Dead Hand Chaos Poker. Can you describe that one for us?
Yeah, I'll do this one pretty quickly. So, Dead Hand Chaos Poker came as a result of me having released my first game, actually got it into distributors, and then you can't have one game. You have to have multiple games, and I only had one. I was like, oh my god, I need a new game. What the hell? It took me forever just to come up with Hexex. So I ended up waking up out of a dream with the idea of Dead Hand Chaos Poker in my head. This was during the poker craze back in the late aughts, and or early aughts, and so I had this vision of a poker game where there was this ghostly image on the card, and you play poker like you normally would. And then just before everyone shows down and the chips are claimed, a final card is drawn and tipped in the light from the rest of the deck. And if it shows a dead hand, let's say it says the high pair is dead. If the high pair is the winner at the table, it's gone. The next rank hand wins.
Oh, wow.
And you still have to play good poker. But it's not really a crutch. But you end up staying in the hand a little bit longer because you don't know if they're going to be out, and people bet a little bit more conservatively. But it's a cool wrinkle to bring to poker.
Yeah, I have I'm sorry, not to interrupt you. I have an image of it where one of the cards says all three of a kind are dead.
Right, and that might not be available, right? So sometimes it does nothing.
Right.
That's it. That's quite interesting. And as someone who actually enjoys poker, and in fact, one of the games I just recently got was Western Legends, and my favorite part of that game is the poker. This is something I want to look into.
Yeah. I have, I think, 3 cases of these left. It's no longer at distributors, but on my website, I've got a way to still fulfill until they run out, like 3 cases left. But in any case, it's pretty cool. If you like poker, and if you like dealer's choice games, like if you're gonna play Hold'em, don't play with this. That would be stupid. You'll just piss people off. But if you're already playing with crazy card games and wild cards and things like that, then this is just one extra wrinkle to throw in there, and it's fun. But that game did phenomenally well because of the craze, and we sold like 10,000 units of it.
Wow, that's great.
And in fact, Jordan Weissman over at WizKids almost licensed it from me after that because he'd been doing Mage Knight and all those clickable games, and he had this vision of doing a clickable poker game with clickable poker chips.
That's
and
intriguing.
he wanted to use my game as kind of like a base engine for it.
Oh, okay.
And it didn't end up happening, but it would have been major for like a guy who had just started his little company.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's a full deck of cards then.
Yeah, it's a simple 52 deck, and but it does have. I created a special print technology for it. So it's a special blend of varnish and opaque ink that appears only when you tip it. And just in case you're playing in really poor light, there's like a cheat sheet, so you'd always know, like, the Queen of Spades is always this. So
okay,
in case you can't see it too well.
And I gotta say, I really like the art on it too. It's really nice art.
Yeah, thank you. The illustrations were done by my friend Robert Mag. He was the creative director at the agency that I was working at that time, and he did a phenomenal job. Like the Ace of Spades alone is just killer to look at. That's the cover of the.
Oh, okay.
Okay, yeah, I like the Suicide King. I was just pointing it out to Daniel over here.
Yeah, those are. I mean, I don't know if you knew this, Curt, but I'm actually a playing card collector as well, and so now, well. I mean, I was broke, but now I've suddenly discovered. All right, that's awesome. So we have Dead Hand Chaos Poker. That was cool. All right, our next one, we have Run for Your Life Candyman. I love the name, first off. You're looking at us kind of like, oh my goodness. What's your thoughts? What's your thoughts on Run for Your Life Candyman?
So this is the game that should never have been. I had this bizarre idea. I had already created Dead Hand, which was a way to throw chaos and intrigue into an existing game. And I started musing oh, what other games are out there that would be fun just to tip over on their heads and try a different angle on it. And because I was known for nasty games, well, the counterpoint would be, what's the most innocent game in the world? Well, that's Candyland. What could I do to really just twist up Candyland and make it mean as hell? How could I do that? And so I came up with this idea on how you could bring battle into Candyland and have gingerbread men rip the limbs off of each other as they try to escape the land.
Yeah, it's actually somewhat a legacy game. You're tearing the limbs off at a certain point from the paper pad.
Well, what's really interesting is, it tickled me so much. I just thought it was hysterical as an idea, even though the game itself wasn't almost even a game. It was an excuse to beat each other up, but it was amusing to me. So I created a black and white drawing of the board. I mocked up all the cards, and I said, well, it actually works. It's kind of interesting. And right around that time, it was time to go to my first Gamma trade show.
Oh, okay.
So, I had Hex out there. I was showing Dead Hand, and I had nothing but this pencil drawing, of what this game might be, just in black and white. And as retailers were walking by my booth, they stopped dead in their tracks, and they're like, oh my God, what have you done? And then so they get a little bit closer and they're like, oh my God, no. Listen, full color, any price you want on it, we will sell the crap out of this thing. And so I was like, yeah, you think? And it's like, yeah. So I ended up actually pursuing it. I tightened it down a little bit. I made the game and was shocked at the reception that it actually got. Now, certainly if you go watch Tom Vassel's review on it, he gave it a very backhanded compliment. He said, we were laughing our asses off. It's a hysterical game. It's not really a game, actually, but we had a great time. But that's truly what's happened. And curiously, the culture that developed around the game is even bigger than the game. We started running events of it at Gen Con, and we did it at like midnight. Sometimes it's 11 p.m. to midnight, or but late night in the convention hall.
Yeah.
And my friend Jonathan Loveley, he started cheerleading the game, and what ended up happening was we developed this bizarre community of people who were like getting hyper into it. So like if you're about to rip someone's head off because you've claimed it as a trophy, as they start tearing the paper, ripping off their head, the entire table like pounds on the table. Rip it off. Rip it off. Rip it off. And then then it's now tradition for someone to take that little piece of paper that, after they've been given it, they hold it above their heads and they stand up and they're like, "Behold, the head of my enemy!" To which every table playing, hearing that, just does like the 300, "Haru!" It is the loudest event at Gen Con anywhere. We've been almost thrown out of the hall several years. But we had 96 players last year screaming their heads off at midnight playing this game. So
that's fantastic.
It's great.
Awesome.
It has no right to be anywhere near as fun as it is.
Well, hey, you can have fun, and you don't necessarily have to have good. I played and no offense to it, but like I played games where me and a group of hardcore Euro gamers sat down as we play a single card to throw somebody into a storm, and then we all just sit back. It's like, this was back in the day when games were made to be fun. It doesn't matter if they're good; they were fun, and we adored it. And so this Roll for Your Life Candyman, or Run for Your Life Candyman, spawned the sequel Roll for Your Life, right?
Well, so yeah, first it spawned Shootin' Ladders, which is probably down on your list.
Yeah.
Which is actually a tactical war game set on the Chutes and Ladders board, again featuring the gingerbread men where you're blowing the limbs off of players.
Right.
But yes, Roll for Your Life Candyman was a recent iteration, and this is it's a speed dice game, and you are rolling as quick as you can to get these matching icons, so you can reach out and grab a candy cane at the center of the table, pull that back, and then it stops the action, and then you demand the matching limb to those dice faces from an opponent, collecting trophies for yourself.
Yeah.
Again, ridiculous fun. It takes one aspect of the Run for Your Life Candyman, like the candy cage match from that, and puts it into a speed dice format. So...
yeah.
And quite honestly, if you think about what it feels like, imagine that scene in Shrek where the gingerbread man is in the arena combat with a broken off lollipop.
Right. Not the gingerbread buttons. Yeah.
That's this game.
Gumdrop buttons, right? Yeah. I own this one. I love it. I love you even added word bubbles into it, like them shouting at each other. It's so good.
We had some leftover spaces on the token sheets, and I'm like, well, let's not waste space. I mean, let's put something on here. And so we put little word bubbles that were taunts from cookie to cookie, hoping that people would eventually take photos of little, the little scenarios.
Oh, that's so great. All right, and then I pulled up Shootin' Ladders as well as you were bringing it up. So you said this is a war game set in the cook. Could it be the Cookieverse? I guess
it is the Cookieverse. Yes, and yeah, it is the quickest, most streamlined strategic shooter game that you will find on the market. It is actually a more interesting game that it even looks like on the board, and you're arming yourself with candy weapons the bazooka, the Gatling gumdrop. You're setting C4EO charges. You've got let's see, hard candy jackets. That you're as ammo, and it's all kinds of ridiculous puns. But you're actually like you're using the chutes and ladders board, kind of like if you think like a frag fest game, like Halo.
Yeah.
Like you're going up and down. It doesn't even matter about getting like from the start to the finish. You are just using it as a battle map, and you'll slide down to get close to someone, and then you go up the ladder, and like it's just like a multi-dimensional combat map.
That's such a bizarre idea, but I absolutely love that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so we have a picture of the map up here on the video, so everybody can see it at home. But yeah, I had never heard about this until I started talking, until we were pulling up pages for this, and that looks phenomenal.
Yeah, it definitely had its day, but obviously there are plenty of games on the market, so it's probably not talked about too much anymore. The interesting thing about it too, like I really love doing the parody stuff. So in the original Chutes and Ladders game, it was essentially a morality play on a game board. So if you did something bad, it led to some kind of negative outcome as you slide down. And if you do something virtuous, you climb up the ladder. Well, so here it's not about learning morality, it's about learning mortality. And then the pictures on the board was like, no good deed goes unpunished. So that's like you'll see like something happen, and then like the terrible thing that happens to you for doing good deed, whereas all like terrible things are rewarded. So it's just again, silly parody. The interesting thing about both of these games is obviously we were doing a parody of existing very popular games, and Candyland obviously is a huge trademark and property for Hasbro.
Right.
So, and I was very careful. Like, I was waiting for like some kind of cease and desist, but I want to make sure I didn't cross any trademark lines, no copyright infringements. Like, I did everything to be a full-on parody of the thing I was actually making fun of, which was the purest, happiest game in the world. And so at one point, I was pitching games to some of the bigger companies, including Hasbro. Uh-huh. So I knew the development guy, Mike Hurdle, who like walked by my booth, Gen Con, when Run for Your Candyman came out. And again, it was another one of these, like, he's walking by, he's like, he's like, oh, Curt, what the? He's just shaking his, he does the Picard, palm, and he's like, oh my, would you mind, could I get a copy of one of these to bring back to my design team? They're just gonna love it. It's like, well, wait a second, Mike. I'm happy to give you one, so long as it doesn't make its way down illegal. And he looks at the game, he looks at my big banner, he's like, you're fine.
I feel like I have to ask, has there been thoughts of any other classic happy games that you're considering
terrorizing?
No, not really.
Okay.
People had asked me, well, what's the next Candyman game? And I was like, I probably never one. But at one point, I was thinking about doing a version of Sorry, where the cookies were going to be like, you'd have a driver and a gunner, and it was going to be, it was going to be a smash up dirty on a figure 8 track.
Uh-huh.
But I never pursued it, so.
No, that sounds like good fun. All right, let's get into the big one that you really got your name going for it.
And that would be Cutthroat Caverns.
Yes, indeed. So Cutthroat Caverns for sure is the game that we got most recognized for, and it was our first bit of critical acclaim. When the game came out, there really hadn't been a lot of semi-co-ops on the marketplace. Certainly none that caught anyone's attention overly. so we end up being nominated for most innovative game of the year. I think that was Dice Tower gave us a shout out for it as well. We got a nod by the Origins Awards. So it was pretty exciting, and it did a lot of things that just hadn't been done before with a pretty clean mechanic and almost unending possible variety, as evidenced by the fact that we now have, I don't know, 5 different expansions that came out for it, and you know, there's so much content for this game. It's crazy at this point. But what is it? If people don't know about it, Cutthroat Caverns is it's a game where you're forced to work together to defeat all the monsters that you're going to encounter in the dungeon. If you don't work together, they'll overwhelm and destroy the party, and no one will win. But imagine you're all Boromir, and you're all after the One Ring. And so, in the end, whoever lands the most killing blows on the most creatures is going to get their pick of treasure, which means that one all-powerful relic is yours, so you're going to do anything you can to get it. That means you're going to trip people. You're going to critical miss them. You're going to, like, all kinds of the various things, because it's about kill stealing. Whoever lands the blow gets all the prestige. And so you time out when's the right time to betray the entire party for your selfish needs. At the same time, you do it too much, too early, whatever, then you don't have enough firepower to win because other players have now died. And it just, it's an amazing game. So,
yeah, it's definitely a very original idea.
Yeah,
I mean,
I haven't heard anything like this.
Yeah. I mean, it's only the person who does the final blow who gets the fame. Like, and you know that, like, you've always imagined, like, D&D players like, yeah, but I killed him. It's like, well, you killed him by tripping. Like, we cut his limbs off. Like, you just fell into him. It's like, yeah, but I killed him, so haha. You know, and you have, like, that whole table talk, the whole background of it. That, yeah, I've enjoyed this one a lot.
Yeah, and honestly, the whole impetus for this game in my design for it, and this is probably one of the ones I take the most pride in, quite honestly. But it was inspired by my own Dungeons and Dragons groups growing up. When I first played D&D, it was with, curiously enough, a group of women. In high school, my D&D group, we were all drama club nerds, and the guys didn't really want to play, so it was me and 6 girls, and we would just play D&D. And I wasn't even the DM; I was just a player. And back in the 80s, that was, like, unheard of. But in any case, we played, like, a super lawful good, like, Tolkien-esque game. Like, if you found a magic item, by God, it went to the person who could wield it best, right? It was, you know...
Good, wholesome adventurers, right?
All good adventurers, all, like, you know, it was about story, not conquests. It was about relationships, you know, just kind of what you'd imagine. Well, I then go to college, and I start playing D&D with a bunch of dudes. A couple of them because the DM had said, "Oh, sure, yeah, you could be an assassin if you want." Like, I started, like, looking around the table as some really horrific things were happening. I was not afraid of anything the DM was dishing out. I could not trust anyone that I was playing with. And that feeling of shock and horror was something that I wanted to capture and perpetuate in this game.
I say you definitely succeeded.
I'm not gonna lie, I haven't tried this one, but now I want to.
Oh my God, it's great. And, you know, honestly, right now, last fall, we just released the app version of the game.
How has that been doing for you?
Yeah, it's been doing great. In fact, it's up again for an Origins Awards now for Best Digital Game.
Nice.
So one of the reasons, I think, is because the game has so many interrupts. You can basically interrupt almost everything that someone does, which makes it a really bad networked game because the lag, the decision clock, anything, it would just drag the gameplay. So we didn't try to do it that way. We made it a solo game versus AI opponents, which is a major challenge because this game, the joy of it doesn't come from a puzzle that you're trying to solve.
Right.
It comes from like the interaction of the players, and without the players, where's the fun in the game? So obviously, I've been demoing this game for 13 years, and I have come to know some very specific player personalities, strategies, attitudes that people bring to the game. And we created 6 individual AIs that mirror the types of players that I have encountered. So they all play their cards in different ways. They all react to different situations in different ways. And it's not just like a black and white. They are rated along some of these things on a spectrum. So sometimes they act as their role. Sometimes they're like, yeah, but... And they do a slightly different. It creates the most human AI simulation that I've ever seen. And you sit there and just like you were cursing your friends at the table for being a complete jerk to you, you will find yourself cursing at the computer because they seem like your nasty friends. And that's the best thing to say about this game.
So I'm noticing by one of the pictures here, it looks like Yellow released a French version of this game for you guys?
They did, yeah. They called it Sang Rancune, which is it's a very clever pun, but it's French and I don't fully understand it. But yeah, they produced it, and very likely I think we're just about to have someone else pick it up as well. So.
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Yeah, that's quite interesting.
Yeah, definitely keep us posted on that.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So that was Cutthroat Caverns, what puts you on the map, which is fantastic. I have another small one here that I have never personally heard of. It's called Sutaku.
Oh, sure. Sutaku was a game I first developed trying to pitch to some big companies. I pitched to Mattel, Hasbro, University Games, a bunch of folks. And it caught some interest, but it didn't actually land anywhere. It was not a game, by the way, that was backstabby, so it didn't really fit in my line. But I really fell in love with the design. And it was a push your luck dice game where you were ending up stacking. Oh, I actually have some right here. These really gorgeous giant dice.
And I'm going to bring your Skype right onto the screen so that way our viewers can see it.
So it's got these just really beautiful kanji. There we go. Of the numbers, and they're gigantic dice. And what you would do is you'd end up stacking them. It was not a dexterity game. It was just a kind of a visually interesting way to like roll sequences of dice. And because it was a push your luck game, I was like, well, okay, so you're not screwing somebody else, but you can screw yourself by pushing yourself too far. So maybe I can kind of tuck it into the theme a little bit. And so I got all ready. I had it on press. I brought it to the Gamma Trade Show that year. And every retailer who stopped by and learned about the game was like, but where's the dagger in this Smirk and Dagger game? I don't get it. I'm like, oh my God. Like, I did such a good job of planting my flag and standing for something that now people are like, this is not what you do. No, I'm sorry. So I had to stop the press. And I had to quickly figure out something I could add to the game for not a lot of money that added the backstabbing mechanic into it. So I created an opportunity. The worst part of the game is when you crap out. You pushed your luck and then you got nothing for it. Well, I was like, okay, well, let's take that minus and make it a positive. When you lose all your points by doing that, now you get this card, a challenge card, which you can now play on someone else to make their roll harder. And that's how I got around it, by adding 13 cards to this game. But it's a very elegant game. It's a game, quite frankly, that I overproduced. The gameplay is a simple pub-style game, but I wanted these dice to be special. I wanted them to be big and chunky and gorgeous. The mold was very expensive, and I had to put a price on the game that I think was outweighted to the style of game that it was. So it didn't perform terribly well when it launched. I then ended up taking a little bit of a hit on it, and I brought the price down just so I could start moving the units. And then it moved very well. But even though people have I've gotten a lot of requests to put this back on the market, but I just haven't done so because it was not one of my great successes, even though I super love the game, and it's a lot of fun.
So, something you mentioned earlier, people were saying, where's the dagger part of this? Is this the precursor why you started the Smirk and Laughter line? This way you can take the dagger part of it out?
Yes, quite honestly, this was the exact moment when I painted myself into a corner that I realized, if I ever have to do this full time, backstabbing games, I love them, they're great, they're not for everybody, and therefore I would have to find some way to grow outside of that to appeal to more people. And that was the moment I realized that was a potential for my future. It was still a good 3-4 years off, but that's when I realized, yeah.
That's awesome.
That's cool.
Yeah, and I'm glad you, and we'll go into it more later, but I'm glad you made another brand that makes sense with, Smirk and Laughter, and still keeping Smirk and Dagger true to its goal. But that's awesome. All right, so that was Sutaku. The next one we have
is Dread Curse.
So Dread Curse. This was the first game that actually came from the outside. Until this point, I had designed all my games by myself. So Stuart presented me this game at one Gen Con, and I fell in love with it. It's a pirate-themed game where there's a lot of take that to it. In fact, I ramped up his original version. It was nowhere near as nasty, but it had lots of potential for it. And I said, if I'm going to produce a pirate game, it's got to be just despicable. And so I added a whole new mechanic. All the cards that came in the game. His original design was just kind of it was a multiple role game where you got to select what role you wanted to be at any point during the game. And it had a really good engine to it, but I wanted then on top of that to have a deck of cards that you could just break every rule and make people hate you. So this game did very well. It's out of print right now, and likely won't be back. But it's significant in that it was the first time that a game from the outside said, yeah, this fits with what I do. I can probably produce more games if I'm not doing them all myself.
right.
Though I end up doing a lot of development on games that come in from the outside in any case. And usually, though, what I do is I like to treat that as a partnership. I don't just manhandle someone's game. I was like, well, here's a gap I would like to fill. Here's a thought. Let's talk about it, and then we kind of work on the ideas together.
Okay.
Okay.
That makes a lot of sense. Actually, is how working with the designer. I mean, you're as the publisher, you also are the developer as well, so that makes sense. You want it to fit your line and how it makes sense in there. With I'm sure your goal is to not break the game or completely redo what they already had planned. But I mean,
Yeah.
I think you're right with the pirate theme. Like, they're despicable people, so I mean, they weren't exactly known for their morality.
Yeah.
So it makes sense to throw those in. That's awesome. So that was Dread Curse. Now, the next one I know as one of the bigger board games that you've ever made, and that would be Student Bodies.
Right. So, Student Bodies. This is another game that was presented again from the outside. Angry Duck Games. They were actually planning on kickstarting this game themselves. So the Kickstarter, I think, had just started, and I saw it at a local con, and I really liked the play. In fact, it was my son and one of my nephews who had played it in I think we were at maybe the first Metatopia, which is a design fair for game designers here in New Jersey, and so they said, "Oh, Dad, you have to come take a look at this game." So I played it with them, and I was like, "Wow, this is really cool." Zombies were already at this huge pitched height of popularity, and quite honestly, they were just on the way out. So this was probably not the right time to bring a zombie-themed game in, but it was different than everything else. And I thought I thought there might be room for it. The other thing was that it was filled with a lot of potential for minis, and all the other zombie games had like tons of minis.
Right.
Well, I wasn't going to be going to Kickstarter because at that time it just wasn't. It wasn't right. I could fund my own games, and too many retailers were upset about Kickstarter at that time, and I said, this is silly. So I decided I was going to make them cardboard standees and then oversize everything. Well, so that it would have a lot of table presence. Mm-hmm. This game, by the way, is it's kind of like the story about the being chased by a bear. You just have to outrun your friends, not the bear itself.
Yeah, right.
And so you are knocking your friends over into zombies and dodging and doing all. It's a great game, and it's really hard because the zombies really swarm you. You're trying to get from the start of the board down the hallway of the school into the lab where there's an antidote. You can, and then the object is to then get back through the hallway to the exit. But of course, as you've been doing that, the zombies keep on, moving towards the door, and so you open that door to the lab again, and you're like, there's no possible way I can get through that, and then somehow somebody just barely does, and so it's got this great tension, which I absolutely loved, and it also had a great mechanic, which I really got excited about. If you die, it's not player elimination. You become the zombie horde and try to stop everyone else from winning. And
that's what I actually enjoyed about this game, is that you become the zombie. So sometimes when I would play it, I would try to purposely die. This way I could become a zombie.
Yeah. And it was fun both ways, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, I think this is not one of the games that was a bestseller for me, quite honestly, which is a shame because I really, really love this game. I always have. I think part of it was it came out at the wrong time. It was at the just when Zombie Wear Out was really starting to hit.
Yeah.
This game launched. It did not have cool minis, so it didn't stack up well visually against a lot of the contemporary games of that time with zombies. And because I wanted it to still have table appeal and I kind of upsized it, the price point was right in the middle of it was a dead zone. You were either a $30 game casual or you were an $80 game with high minis. And I was like, yeah, but I'll just go in between that. Yeah. And that was a bad place to be. So while the game is great, it's not a game that did as well as I think it should have. So this is another game that I think it's probably hard to find on the marketplace, but this is one that we still do have. So so that can be gotten on my website, or you could also have a retailer locally order it for you too.
That's awesome.
Nice.
So, of course, your website, smirkandagger.com.
Yep.
Definitely go check it out if that sounds interesting to you. I have played it. It is absolute shenanigans, as you would imagine. And it really does feel like, it's like, well, I'm going to shove you into this pile of zombies. Let them gnaw on you a bit while I run the other way. It was pretty great.